Yo, so today I'm going to be breaking down a dark ambient melody for someone like Lil Baby and then throwing some drums on it.
Pineapple!
Alright, so the weird thing with this melody is my process behind it was basically just taking a Lil Baby like piano melody with like the top line and the chords and everything and splitting up each layer into different synths, and then I kind of ended up with this like kind of ambient dark feeling thing, so it turned out pretty cool in the end. The sound I started off with is the Silk Split. It's a plucked keys from Analog Labs. Overall, it sounds pretty cool. And then here's the MIDI for it. It's just a basic progression where you have a normal triad and then you shift the middle note down. As you can see here, it goes from C to B because I wrote this out in A minor. And then for the second half, it's just the exact same chords, but everything just gets pitched up 5. So it's in the same scale, but there is just like a little bit of a difference. And then the 808 note can change there as well in the drums. So overall, it's a super simple pattern. And then for the effects on that, I just have ambience turned about halfway down, magic switch turned about 3/4 down, and then an EQ to cut the lows, and then an imager to make it just feel really wide. So after all those effects are put on, I rendered it out because I only have the demo version of Analog Labs, but then here's what it sounds like. So just a very simple pattern, but it does get the job done. And then after that, I went ahead and put a couple more effects on it. I put magic switch again, about the same like quarter way up. And then again, a low cut and a imager, just because I did have to pitch it down an octave, just because it was really high sounding and I wanted it to sound more dark. So I ended up pitching it down an octave. And then for the next sound that really like carries the whole melody, it's like the main like background sound. It's the wobbly tri-cymbal, again from Analog Labs. It's an evolving pad. It's like a couple wobbly flutes like bouncing off each other. Overall, it just sounds really nice. And then again, a super simple MIDI copying those same chords with like the middle note that's put down one. But I left out the second like repetition of these chords and then just stretched them out so they're like long and they like sustain into each other. I think those are the right terms. And then I went ahead and put different effects on this. I put tape cassette 2 with the wow and flutter at 10 and 11%. Turned up the reverb with a little bit of like a decay boost, and then a phaser on the Aqua Nice preset. Then I just cut the lows and then again added an imager to just make it feel really wide. So then I went ahead and reversed it. So just like chopped it up and reversed the order after I like reversed the whole thing so it stays in the same chord progression. But I did add more effects to it, which I'll mention first because that's what the automation clips are. But again, reverb with the decay turned up to kind of minimize the clicking from reversing it because there was like a tiny little dead space in it. And then I went ahead and did Fruity Love Filter with the cut knob automated and Finisher Micro on the Infinity preset, which is like a sparkle with that automated as well. And then of course, low cut just to make room for the 808. And then Pancake on the bigger preset with the mix turned down to 70%. And then the automation clips are really just a bunch of trial and error, but overall I really like the way this pattern sounds and it kind of carries the whole melody. So here's what it sounds like. So overall, like a super like, it just sounds crazy. And right here, you can see what I'm talking about with the dead space. That's just because that was like the first bit of the melody and it would have like taken a little bit to like get kicked on. There was still a bit of a click here, but it sounds all right in the overall melody. And then the next sound for the melody really just fills up the whole low end for the entire loop, but it's the Ellie Custom C7 wash piano. It just has a little bit more reverb and sounds just darker than say like the normal C7 piano. So it's great for these like low notes. And then again, a unbearably simple melody. It just copies the root notes and then has them duplicated down an octave. No strum or randomization because it just sounded all right. And just kind of sits in the back and fills up a lot of space, so it isn't really that necessary because it's not like a main melody. So before I rendered it out, I just threw this EQ on it because there was a little bit of like high mids in there that were giving it more of like a piano feel, but I wanted to like take that out and just make it like a super dark piano. But then after I rendered it out, you can see here the normal chords, but then I went ahead and also just reverse those chords so it kind of like hits and then it builds back up and then it hits with the different chord. So again, another very simple melody, but here's what it sounds like. So that just really does fill up a lot of space. And then also on the intro piano, after I rendered it out, I added reverb and then again a low cut and then an imager just to make it feel really wide. All right, and then the next sound is kind of like the top line of the whole thing, but is the rewind pluck from the Adapt Serum Bank. Again, one of my favorite plucks. I use this all the time. But basically the MIDI just does like a Lil Baby piano top line. Like I explained at the beginning of the video, all of these different synth parts are just different elements of those kind of MIDIs broken down and like separated into different synths. But overall with these, you just kind of want to stick to triplets. I mean, you can see here, all these are like triplets, I guess. And then again, the notes next to each other in the scale tend to give off a more dark feeling. So all of these are roughly like next to each other in the scale. And I think it actually copies those same chords, because if you look here, it's the root note, which is A, C, and then E, which would be the top note. And I think I just broke it up and like arpeggiated it. And then the only variation in this melody is again, pitching this part up 5, same scale, same everything, just different notes. And overall it just like fits that second chord as well. And then for the effects on that, the main one is I was trying out the Looperator demo. So I found this preset that's called Large Reverse, and it just like reverses it in a really nice way. And overall just spices that up a little bit. And then the left to right shy preset in Pancake, nothing turned down. It's pretty much just the stock preset. So after those effects, it does sound really cool. And here's what it sounds like. So overall, I just really like the way this turned out. I think that Looperator preset really just carries this. All right, and then for the next sound, which really just copies that same MIDI, it's the LA Custom C7 Cinematic Piano. Again, just one of my favorites from Keyscape. It just has a little bit more reverb than like the normal one, but not as much as like the Wash one. So like I mentioned before, it does just copy the same MIDI, so there's really no explaining. And then on the mixer, I just have a little bit of reverb with the decay turned slightly up. So here's what it sounds like. And then also with this MIDI, I didn't do this on the pluck because there's no velocity controls, but I did randomize it. So this makes it so like some of the notes peek through more, because when all the melodies are playing with this piano playing, it kind of blends into everything and just kind of makes it seem more full. But then you'll hear these like piano notes that kind of just like peek out and like stand out a little bit. So overall, it just sounds a lot nicer if you do end up randomizing it a little bit more like aggressively. And then for the next sound, which just kind of accents the chords, it's the Forte string from the Exotic Volume 2 one-shot kit. I don't know why I didn't use BBC Symphony Orchestra on this. I should have. It would have sounded better, I think. But overall, it got the job done, so it doesn't really matter. And it just copies the chords. You can see here, here's the bass notes, A and D, and then the top notes. And then I ended up pitching the middle notes up, and then also root notes as well. So it just makes it seem a little bit more full than it actually is. So again, all of these MIDIs are unbearably simple, but they do like all combine in a really nice way. So here's what it sounds like. And then on the mixer for that, I just have reverb, as you guys could hear. With this particular one shot, you really do need to use reverb. It just makes it sound 10 times better. And then, of course, a EQ to cut the lows. And then finally, the last sound, which is kind of like an accent top line. I don't know, it's just really crazy, and you can kind of hear it stand out in the melody. Kind of the same thing with the piano, where you can notice it sometimes, but then other times it just kind of blends with the whole melody. But it's the Softy Bell from the Flowers Volume 1 one-shot kit. And then here's what the MIDI looks like. Basically, it just copies some of the notes from that repetitive top line, but there is a ton of little slide notes in here to make it like glide really quick. And I really like doing these in my melodies as of recently. It just spices it up a bunch. And then it goes slow here for a second. This is the part where I was talking about where it kind of like blends in with the rest of the melody. and then these two little sections stand out a little bit more. But overall, if you're working with one shots, definitely try out some slide notes. They sound crazy, especially if you do really drastic sweeps like this and then throw a delay on it. It just sounds really good. But here's what it sounds like. So it just sounds like really spacey and bouncy. But then for the mixing, I just threw a delay on it on the ping pong preset, turned it about a quarter way down. And then finally, the last sound is a bass from Omnisphere. It's the Growler Moog bass, just one of my favorites for these kind of like dark ambient melodies. This and the Big Fatty are like my go-tos for these. But overall, just like a really solid bass. And then the bass pattern is pretty simple, but I did spice it up with some rolls just to make it a little bit more interesting and add some like variation and like difference in the intro, just making it sound a little bit more unique. So I just have it play the bass note, there's a little pause, then it picks back up, does a crazy roll, and then this kind of just like transitions it upwards so it connects better with this D, and then another break, and then instead of going upwards, it goes downwards so it comes back to the A. Just overall trying to make it like smooth transitions. And then for the mixing on that, I just have Temper, which is a distortion plugin. It's free, it's really good, you should definitely go check it out. And then an EQ to kind of get rid of that like high-end distortion, but still like keep it rumbly in the low end. And also keep it a bass. Why would you cut the lows on a bass? That's like, doesn't make sense. But then after all those effects, it ends up sounding like this. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the melody, and I went over the mixing as I went, so I don't really have to go over that now. On the master, I just have ambience, of course. It just fades in at the beginning and then does a little sweep because I have a little pause here. For whatever reason, I really like to do this. Everything's pretty much cut out, including the bass. The only thing left in is the piano that's reversed. So it just is like a really deep build-up, kind of. And then again, when I explain the arrangement, I really don't know what I do. I think I try to group things in threes. That's usually a good increment to like have something playing, but then also have like spaces without it. And then of course, just added a like vinyl texture and then rendered out all the stems. And then after I did all that, I went ahead and rendered it out and then pitched it down one. So yeah, I thought this was a pretty cool melody, and here's what the final product sounds like. So overall, it kind of feels empty, but I want that because I want to like do some crazy stuff with the drums, which I'm going to do now. So yeah. Alright, so that's going to be pretty much it for the video. Once again, I can't figure out how to make this straight up like triplet hi-hat pattern sound good. It just sounds too busy, there isn't enough space. I don't know, I'll figure it out eventually. But yeah, drums alright, melody pretty cool. That's pretty much it for the video. Thank you guys for watching. Yeah, here's the final beat with more effects, probably like risers and stuff. Anyways, bye.